Right, time to test. We're going to test out Rain. I've covered all of the details in the previous video, so check that out if you want to see any of that. And yeah, I will not, just before anybody asks, in case, I will not be pulling for him. You guys have banned me from Fire and Lightning characters, except for free tickets, because you know what, I honestly don't care about that. So let's go in. We have our usual tester team, and let's see how good Rain does. However, I am already feeling like this won't be happening, because apparently we have DLC right in the middle of my video. You know what? Gumi, that's a 10,000 yen fine. You know, I don't know what you guys did. Something was wrong. But no, I'm leaving this in. I'm leaving this as documentary footage. They screwed up, not me. Oh look, we're back. Cool. Alright, boy, if there was a thing on the banner where everybody was just getting that character for free, then I feel really bad now. And also blame my viewers for banning me from Lightning and Fire characters. Of course, the one, you know, I'm not saying there actually was. I'm just saying if there was banner issues, that's why'd you guys do this to me? Anyway, we'll jump right in, test out this character, see. But I'm already expecting him to be a high damage character. The most interesting thing about Rain is that his overall package of abilities is kind of pretty idiot proof. The fact that he can essentially just, you know, cast a defensive ability and get a defensive buff for one turn. Offense means that he can essentially change as need be to get things done when things need to be done. All that is really, really impressive, really, really valuable. And you can see here, already outspeeding our tank a little bit. We're not going to do anything with him for the first turn. Thing that we want to do first, cast his Trustmaster ability. See, we're getting 20 AP off of that. We were kind of interested in that. And there you'll also see one other thing. So that was partially from his greatsword and his ability. Since he cast a defensive ability, he gets a defense up buff for one turn. He uses an offensive ability, he's offensive, and deals more damage for one turn, but it loses those defensive buffs. Really interesting. Also, his greatsword giving him another 5 AP, because again, he did not use a offensive ability. If we were to just say take a shot here, yes, 4,000 points of damage does seem to be like a pretty high amount, all things considered, but we haven't run any of his buffs yet, anything like that. But at this point, it's a little presumptuous to say that we are not, you know, taking a little bit of advantage this early on, but he would be taking more damage if in the case that, you know, that ability wasn't there. So worth noting. Let's move on. We've cast a lot of barriers here. We've cast a lot of defensive things. We also have a tank here as well. Test out some, see if that damage is going to be getting through a tank. However, it's not, you know, ideal setups, but whatever. And so just right away, firing off this ability. First off, if we take a look at what it's doing against the wolf, that poor wolf. But let's see a few other things. Gilgamesh absolutely just floored, dead, 13k HP damage through him very quickly. Testing against the tank, a little bit, as you can see, more resistant, which you would kind of generally expect. But we can see we're getting through a lot of defense very, very quickly. That limit burst, decreasing healing power, decreasing fire resistance and defense. And here we're getting good results. Not necessarily the best against everyone, but again, we haven't gotten into it yet. So we have two support skills that we want to cast here. First one, reducing the damage taken, increasing fire attack, sealing barrier destruction, and those abilities as well that we'll cast off and using opponents. So take a look. Not that one. That's our wall of text. We'll be activating enough. We want this one and this one, which is in his sub job, which we are not in. There we go. Again, generating 5 AP. If we just stop for a second and look at how much we've generated already from 2 abilities, 94 AP without really doing anything. And this would be fairly reasonable to constantly expect, because in the early parts of the fight, you're not engaging, you're casting defensive abilities, and you're generating extra AP off of it just from equipping his own greatsword. Also looking at resistances here, we're pretty good against multiple things, and if you want to stack more resistances to be good against certain types of damage, very easily possible to be done. Right, so we'll just do this. Cast a few more abilities. All right, now I think we're pretty well set up, so let's just pass the turns and get over here. Once again, firing off that ability. Here you can see that barrier is working pretty hard to keep some of our characters alive, some of the defensive things making them more likely to survive this potentially fatal damage. But also in the kit, we do have, for example, well, this one is that what I really wanted to actually get, the barrier breakers. Actually, that should be the actual breaker. Getting through and canceling those barriers in the case of Shrek just outright killing the character, but does a long way. Now we can also see that Mont here pretty good at actually being resilient against this type of damage. Mont has gotten an upgrade since the one of the most recent updates. I haven't covered it yet, but obviously I will. But it is worth noting just that, you know, extra defensive capability will be quite valuable for surviving potentially damage on. Here, another 20 AP that we're casting. Still have all of our defensive buffs. And within 3 turns, 136 AP, not bad, from casting basically most of his abilities. Now let's see how defensive this character is. So yeah, not too terribly much here. Status effects probably going to be the biggest problem for this character. Magic damage here. Shreken's Limit Burst is still considered to be quite powerful, but we're only dealing about half of his HP. And with the HP restoral that he does have and the DPS being as high as it could, should be able to just make pretty quick work at healing. Looks pretty good even against magic type damage as well, even though counter and whatnot is against shooting. Next up, Gilgamesh. Not expecting too much here. Yeah, maybe ice, not the best thing to counter him with. We'll move on. Sephiroth, the one I'm kind of interested in here. Once we have a lot of our buffs activated on King Mon, you can... King Rain, sorry, they look the exact same. You can see how much damage reduction we are getting, and this is one of the things. Even if you say to yourself, well, okay, at the beginning of the fight, that HP didn't look really all that impressive. Well, now here we got like this, basically showing that he is actually very, very damage resistant once he gets rolling. You will need to be running some Dispel, canceling off a bunch of stuff off him to get it done. And here, yeah, Curse, obviously a really, really big problem for him. But DPS not coming back the other way does not look at least super convincing as of yet. Either single target or AoE. You bring in Sephiroth, you know, a closer single target resistance, still not impressive. So status effects are probably going to be the biggest weakness in this character's armor. And there are plenty of, to be fair, there are plenty of status effectors out there right now doing some nasty things that could ruin King Rain's debut. But either way, skip ahead just a little bit more. Let's see what some of those abilities are looking like. Here, we can't test this one, no friendly fire, but it is nice to know that your allies are safe even if this is cast. Looking at single target, this is really not that impressive. He does have some single target resistance up, but overall not really doing enough damage to probably be too terribly noteworthy. Same here, a break. I think that this one is really easy to just cut, not worry about whatsoever. The one thing I will say as well, AP costs are considerably lower here. If I was to say anything, Grandershalt Saber, which is one of his most interesting abilities that does get stronger the more you use it. Damage feels a little bit middling compared to some of the other characters, so this is probably going to be one of the ones that is at the end of the fight more useful when it comes down to a slugfest between two characters. But until then, we kind of have to be proven that Rain can survive to the end of the fight more than other characters for that situation to be really all that useful. So yeah, my overall thoughts is that Rain is a very well-built unit, and that's not surprising. Rain is kind of the poster child for FFB and OA Wotv as well. He's a very, very strong fire character and an absolutely top-notch greatsword character. And with some new tricks and interesting things in his kit that will probably appear in other characters in the future. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way that this character is built, even if, you know, he is just going to be maybe a little bit strong for a while. He has plenty of good partners with the amount of Greatsword and Greatsword VC support that we've seen lately. He has plenty of extra healing support also to support him as well, with things such as Karsha in the game. But yeah, Rain, same character, almost separated by, you know, a few eons or whatever. King Rain, definitely a top-notch character, and I look forward to reporting back on him in a few days, seeing how and what teams he ends up best on. And yeah, that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching. I guess just to end the video really quickly, let's show off that animation one more time of what that limit burst animation looks like. And you may be wondering, why this choice of music? I don't know. Fire character, gonna balance it out with a little bit of water relax. Thanks so much. See you later.